The earth is perfectly designed, a master of engineering. And remember, God spent 5 days making the earth and its inhabitants, 1 day making all the rest of the astronomical bodies. Well, the earth spins at just the right speed. A 24-hour period gives us darkness for a period of time, which is a good thing for rest. But if it were slower, like 10 days, for example, we would have long, dark, cold periods. If it was any faster, we would have violent winds. The axial tilt gives us moderate seasons. Its circular orbit gives us climate stability. It's the perfect distance from the sun. It's the perfect temperature, allowing for liquid water. All of these factors and many more are necessary for Earth's habitability because, as God said through the prophet Isaiah, "For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else." Well, our atmosphere is very important. It nurtures us. It protects us from deadly radiation and gives us air to breathe. A thicker atmosphere, or one that with a different composition, could produce massive greenhouse effect instead. The earth is covered with water. The water above, the atmospheric or the water vapor, and the waters below. Well, the oceans cover about 71% of the Earth's surface, and water is truly a wonder of chemistry. There is in reality no molecule like water. There are many molecules very similar to water, but none that have the properties of water. Water is this truly bizarre molecule. And oddly, because of this, I believe many of our units of measure are based on water. Density is based on water. The energy for fusion, energy for vaporization are based on water. The specific heat scale is based on water. The Celsius temperature scale is based on water. The 0 to 100 degrees is a freezing point and boiling point of water. Water is this truly bizarre molecule. Like I say, there are many molecules similar to water, but it has very unusual properties in comparison. For example, water is the only substance in existence that we know of that becomes less dense when it becomes a solid. Now, all other substances are least dense when they're in gaseous forms, become more dense in their liquid form, and have the highest density in their solid form. Water is the only substance that there is that becomes less dense in its solid form. And because of that, water, when it freezes, doesn't sink down, become more dense, and sink down to the bottom of the liquid water, causing lakes and bodies of water to freeze from the bottom up. Instead, it becomes less dense, rises to the surface, and eventually seals off these bodies of water, preventing them from freezing up. It has a really high specific heat. This is the heat required to raise the temperature of a substance 1 gram. It has an enormous latent heat, the heat which is the heat absorbed or released during a change of phase, like when it evaporates or condenses. It has a high surface tension. It's the universal solvent. The vast majority of molecules are dissolved in water, thus it's called a universal solvent, and it's able to participate in hydrogen bonding. I mean, water is this extremely, extremely unique molecule, and one that is extremely important, required for life. When natural science tries to find life elsewhere in the cosmos, they usually either look for carbon sources, because we're all carbon-based organisms, or water, to try to find another location in the solar system where there might be life. Well, where do your astronomers, your natural scientists say all this water came from? The meteorites, not asteroids as this were, are thought to have deposited the water found on Earth. Repetitive strikes from meteorites have managed to cover the Earth by 71% water. Well, I'm going to also talk about our moon. Now, our moon is exactly the right size for the Earth. Our moon is strangely large, though. It is the 5th largest moon in our solar system, but it's by far the largest relative to the size of the planet that it orbits. For comparison, our moon has a radius that is 27% of the Earth. So it's 27% of the radius of the Earth. The next largest moon in the solar system, relative to a major planet, is Triton of Neptune, that has a diameter of 5.4% of Neptune. The next largest moon in our solar system is literally like 1/4 the size relative to the planet it orbits. Our moon is massive. The moon's diameter is over 50% greater than that of the dwarf planet Pluto. It's massive, a massive moon when you compare it to the other moons in the solar system. But our moon is at exactly the right distance to create favorable tides, one of the functions of the moon. The moon creates a gravitational force that creates tides and tidal currents. It's close enough so that its gravity creates these tides and currents in the Earth's oceans, preventing stagnation, but it's far enough away so that the tides are not harmful to us. The Earth's gravity stabilizes the Earth's rotation and also stabilizes the Earth's tilt, which is responsible for our seasons. The seasons are caused as the Earth, tilted on its axis, travels in a loop around the sun each year. Summer happens in the hemisphere tilted towards the sun. Winter is on the opposite side. As the Earth travels around the sun, the hemisphere that is tilted towards or away from the sun changes, given our seasons. Well, the moon is uniquely positioned to serve as signs, according to Genesis, and to mark seasons and days and years. One way we do that is by observing the lunar shadows, which are used to track the progression of time through months. Well, the moon has been intensely studied, both from distance and directly. The moon remains the only astronomical body that humans have visited. One of the purposes of the Apollo missions was to study the moon, its composition, as a way of trying to answer the mystery of its origin. Well, these missions produced some interesting findings and many surprises. For example, when the Apollo spacecraft traveled to the dark side of the moon, the back side of the moon, because understand the same side of the moon faces us all the time. The moon doesn't spin. It's tidally locked to us, so we see the same size all the time. Well, when the Apollo spacecraft traveled to the dark side of the moon, the other side of the moon, scientists were surprised to learn that the Maria, shown here, were conspicuously absent from the backside of the moon. Now, Maria stand out as these dark, smooth areas seen here, which is distinct from the surrounding terrain. Let me give you a better look at one of these. Maria, this flat place that you see there, were apparently partly flooded by lava when volcanoes erupted on the moon, probably as a result of massive impacts that triggered volcanic flows. The lava then froze, forming rock. Since that time, meteoroid impacts have created craters within the Maria, like the one you see here. Now, if the moon were billions of years old, as they argue, you would expect it to be reasonably uniform. The absence of Maria on the dark side indicate that at one point in time, fairly recently, it would seem the moon suffered a terrible catastrophe. Some have suggested that an asteroid shower might have triggered even the global flood. It's asymmetrically covered in meteors and asymmetrically Maria as well. Well, the Apollo 11 was one of the most famous missions of modern times, during which Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. This may be the most famous photo of all time, showing the astronaut Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface. Apollo 11 collected rocks and soil and placed instruments, including the first of 3 seismometers, to detect seismic activity, quakes. Apollo 15 carried the third seismometer. and placed on the moon. After it was deployed, the simultaneous operation of the 3 working instruments permitted calculations of the seismic properties of the lunar interior. In total, the Apollo missions brought back 2,415 samples of moon rocks and soil, weighing a total of 842 pounds. This was during 6 lunar expeditions from 1969 to 1972. Rocks included Mare basalt, that's lava flows from these maria, and breccia, formed from pieces of many different rocks, shattered and melted and mixed together by the great meteorite impacts that rocked the moon. Well, the main purpose for collecting rocks and soil samples was to help answer the question of how the moon formed through, again, purely natural processes. The 3 competing theories at the time of the Apollo missions were these. It formed near the Earth as a separate body through accretion, same particles sticking together, right, forming bigger particles and ever bigger particles. So it formed at the same, as near the Earth as a separate body through accretion. Another theory was that it formed somewhere else and was captured by the Earth as it came flying by. Another theory was that it formed as part of the Earth and separated from the Earth through a fission. So that maybe the Earth's spinning too fast and a big chunk of it flew off. Fission theory. Now we're going to discuss each of these theories to see if any of them squares with the following facts. The moon has a low density that shows that it does not have a substantial iron core like the Earth does. The moon rocks contain few volatile substances like water, which implies extra baking the lunar surface relative to that of the Earth. The relative abundance of oxygen isotopes on the Earth and the moon are identical, however, would suggest that the Earth and the moon formed at the same distance from the sun. So let's see if the facts square with this. So the moon and the Earth are believed to have condensed individually from the nebula, this swirling cloud of gas and dust that formed the solar system, with the moon forming in orbit around the Earth. It is believed that particles combine due to gravitational attraction, leading to ever larger celestial bodies. This is the accretion mechanism. And then the moon formed out of the same material as the Earth. This is the accretion theory for the formation of the moon. Well, if the moon formed in the vicinity of the Earth, it should have nearly the same composition. However, the Apollo missions found that the lunar rocks were substantially different from the Earth's. The moon should possess a significant iron core, but it does not. Now, the physics of 2 objects condensing together is problematic. Also, this hypothesis does not have a natural explanation for the extra baking that the lunar material has apparently received. Also, the moon has a different chemical composition than the Earth, which some scientists believe points to it having formed as a separate body and either near or far and was captured by the Earth. This is the other theory known as the captured theory. This theory proposes that the moon was formed somewhere else in the solar system and it was later captured by the gravitational field of the Earth. The moon's different chemical composition could be explained if it formed elsewhere in the solar system. However, being captured is problematic. Something would have to slow it down by just the right amount at just the right time, and scientists are reluctant to invoke fine-tuning hypotheticals. Also, this hypothesis does not have an explanation for the extra baking the lunar material has received, and it violates some basic laws of physics. As it approaches, it will speed up and develop sufficient velocity. It will speed up and develop sufficient velocity to escape the Earth's gravity. The energy would need to be reduced somehow. What reduced its speed at just the right moment is unknown. Also, the oxygen isotopes, Also, the oxygen isotopes we mentioned before are identical on the Earth and Moon, suggesting they formed at the same distance from the Sun. Well, the other theory we discussed was the fission theory. And the fission theory states that the Moon was originally part of the Earth and separated from it due to the Earth rapidly spinning during its early history. The Pacific Ocean basin is thought by some to be the place where the Moon came from. Now, that this theory was thought possible since the Moon's composition resembles the Earth's mantle. However, tests of lunar rocks brought back by the Apollo missions revealed that the Moon is relatively deficient in iron. Also, the present-day Earth-Moon system should contain fossil evidence of this rapid spin, and it does not. And like others, this hypothesis does not account for the extra baking the lunar material has received. Plus, to be possible, the Earth's rotation would need to be incredibly fast, like once every 2.6 hours or so. And there's no evidence of this. Getting a planet spinning that fast from a nebula is problematic, to say the least, as we will discuss in a bit when looking at the rapid rotation of Jupiter, for example. But if it was spinning at such a speed originally, that creates another problem, the massive energy dissipation that would have to take place while slowing it to its present speed. Baldwin discusses this in his book, A Fundamental Survey of the Moon. He says, if the rotation of the Earth had been slowed by tidal friction from 4 to 24 hours, as thought, there would have been a massive energy dissipation, sufficient to raise the temperature of the entire Earth by 1,000 degrees Celsius. Such heat would have boiled away all the oceans. So, problematic theory. Although it was hoped that the Apollo missions would help solve the mystery about the Moon's origin, the data instead argued against all of them. The accretion, capture, and fission theories were all laid to rest by the research done by the Apollo missions. Several years after the Apollo program concluded, there was still no agreement about the Moon's origin. As Barron states here in 1975, remember the Apollo missions were for 1961, 1972. So a few years after, still no clue. Here he states, in spite of everything that we have learned during the last few years, we still cannot decide between these three theories. We will need more data and perhaps new theories before the origin of the Moon is settled to everyone's satisfaction. So, a new theory was developed. You want to guess? A super asteroid saves the day once again. It is believed that a star-sized asteroid impacted the Earth, leading to the formation of the Moon. NASA's World Book Online Reference Center summarizes the theory this way. Scientists believe that the Moon formed as a result of a collision known as the giant impact or the big whack. According to the idea, the Earth collided with a planet-sized object 4.6 billion years ago. As a result of the impact, a cloud of vaporized rock shot off the Earth's surface and went into orbit around the Earth. The cloud cooled and condensed into a ring of small, solid bodies, which then gathered together, forming the Moon. Well, there's no proof for this. It's just a story. Not even a necessarily good story either. They only support our computer simulations that require everything to be just right. Also, it requires that the Moon to be formed 4.5 billion years ago at the very birth of the solar system, which is thought to be 4.6 billion years old. And why doesn't Venus have a moon? It is, if it formed at the same time, the same way. Excuse me. We need to keep in mind that these are just theories put forth to answer how these things could form naturally rather than by creation. Analysis of the giant impact and fission hypothesis for the origin of the Moon, published in the International Geology Review, concluded that, quote, the origin of the Moon is still unresolved. Well, I think the best explanation of the evidence is that the Moon was created in its present position very recently. Well, the Apollo astronauts also installed laser ranging retroreflectors. The first was placed on the moon in 1969 by the Apollo 11 astronauts. Several additional reflectors were placed by the Apollo 11 program. The alphabetical names you see there indicate where they were. The Apollos were the A's, and then so you see A14, A15 there, and the Sea of Tranquility. These were replaced by the Apollo missions. The one that's designated L was placed by the Russian France Luna robotic probe. Well, the purpose of these is for distance finding. By beaming lasers at the reflectors from Earth, scientists have been able to determine the distance between the two bodies at any time to an accuracy of about 3 centimeters. What they discovered, however, with these measurements was that the moon is moving away from the Earth at a rate of about 4 centimeters per year. 4 centimeters per year. However, looking backwards in time, the recession rate was faster. This is because the lunar recession is caused by tidal forces. The moon is actually pulling the oceans away from the Earth towards itself and causes the Earth to bulge. This bulge pulls back on the moon, causing it to accelerate in its orbit. Well, because the moon's gravitational force is stronger, the closer you are to it, the moon would have had larger tidal bulges in the distant past, creating a greater pulling force, increasing the angular momentum. Thus, the moon receded at a much greater rate, as shown there by those red arrows you see here on this figure. Well, here are the calculated distances looking back in time. The moon is currently 240,000 miles away from the Earth, but would have been 28.4 miles closer a million years ago. And although the solar system believed to be 4.5 billion years old, based on current rates of recession, the moon would have been in contact with the Earth only 1.4 billion years ago. Well, if you don't want a data table, here you go. Moon go boom. There you go. Well, the moon was truly uniquely designed for us. What we're not being told about the moon is that there's no sound explanation for its origin. Lunar recession says it can't be billions of years old.